Cool. Let's see. Ben, the image that you sent was also really awesome. I like the
Yeah,
like the
it's super
studio
cool.
thing. Very cool stuff. Yay.
Hey, tell me, where are you these days? Are you in the city?
I have to mute YouTube so that I'm not hearing you twice.
Yeah.
All those images are of real people's studios. None of those are like marketing photos. I know. I mean, I guess they are marketing photos, but they're not like staged. Like
That's
those are
cool.
all real Ableton Live artists that like as artist relations visits people's studios. We're like, "Wow, you have a beautiful studio. Would you mind if we took pictures?"
That's cool. That's so nice. That's very
Yeah.
nice of them, though. But okay, it looks like
Yeah.
we're live now on YouTube as well. So hi everyone, thank you all for being here. Welcome to the November edition of the New York City Ableton User Group. We are hosted by 343 Labs, which is a school based in Manhattan and also in Berlin. So maybe it's very apt that because of that, or relate on a related note, we are a Ableton Certified Training Center, and we have a couple of Ableton Certified Trainers teaching. I'm one of them. My name's Marie Lim, and I'm a CT. I teach out of 343 Labs, do a lot of the online school as well. And we also host the Ableton User Group. So we do this usually on the second week of every. Am I hearing? So everyone in the who's in YouTube or is in Zoom with us, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. I don't want to mute you. It's okay because I'm hearing some feedback from people. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna mute it anyway. Sorry, everyone. But we're gonna have a fun time today, even if I end up muting every single person, even myself. But most importantly, we're here and we want to honor the release or the announcement of Ableton Live 11 that got announced on November the 10th, so 2 days ago at this point. But we're excited to have here today the very amazing Ben Casey to present to us about Live 11. So applause for Ben, everyone. Hi, Ben. How's it going?
Hi, how's it going? It's good to be back here.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for being here. And we will also have a little bit of a demo of some of the new features in Live 11, everyone. But if you do have existing questions about Live 11, feel free to leave that for us in the Zoom chat if you're with us in Zoom, or you can also tell us on YouTube. But maybe let's just jump right into things. But to start off, Ben, yay, Live 11, yay.
Thank you. It's super awesome to be here. It's been exciting and a really hard secret to keep, waiting to get to share this with everybody. So it's great to get to talk about it and share it with the world. So I figured what I might do is jump in and show all of you some of the new stuff in Live 11. And then if you have questions as well, we totally can take questions from you folks here on Zoom and also you folks on YouTube in the chat. And we can kind of show you whatever you might be interested in or answer whatever burning questions you might have. Sound good?
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, that's me on behalf of everyone. Yeah.
So I think maybe I'll just jump in. Shall I share my screen and we can all have a peek?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Cool. So yeah, Live 11 is available in beta now. If you already have a copy of Live 10, you can go to our beta site and sign up and download the beta for Live 11 and try all this stuff yourself. I'm just gonna jump in. Can everybody hear this okay?
Sounds awesome. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not actually going to play any of that, but it's just good to make sure just to scare everybody with some really loud drums first. What I am going to do is go over here to the browser. I feel like for a lot of us, like your music making kind of starts off in the browser. It's where you store all of your personal musical ideas. It's where you like get your unique sound because it's where all of your samples and your instruments and your plugins and your projects are. So there's some fun new stuff in the browser in Live 11. The groove pool is right here in the browser. So all of these different grooves that you can use to kind of apply unique human feel and rhythm to the stuff you're working on are a lot easier to get to. But the big one that I want to talk about is just templates. Like for a lot of us, we work on a lot of different kinds of musical ideas in Live. And so having these templates right here where you can kind of save and create your own starting points for how you want to get started making music, I think is really helpful. I'm going to use this bass and keys one just to start off this, which is one that I made myself. It's just a piano that sounds like a piano. And then over here we've got like a really big 808, like, which will test whether you're wearing headphones or not when you listen to this. To start with, I'm just going to make a new clip here, and I want to show you the new keys and scales function that's built into Live. So right here, if I turn on the scale button in this clip, I can select a musical key. I'm going to go with G, and then I can select any of these scales. We've got a lot of the traditional scales. We've got some more unique scales that maybe you're less familiar with. I'm just going to go with G minor for now. And right here in the piano roll, you can see that all the notes within that given key and scale are lit up here. There's a keyboard shortcut. If you feel like you just want to see them right here on the piano keys themselves, you can press the K shortcut, and they'll unhighlight if that's a little too distracting. But I kind of like when they're on. And in addition to kind of highlighting these rows, I think a lot of people like to use the fold button right here, which folds the clip view up to only show you the stuff that you're working on at the moment. Well, there's a new scale button right next to it that folds the piano roll to only show the notes within the particular scale and key that you have chosen. So right here, bam, I like immediately have just the notes that are in G minor. And this is super useful because it means that like, if you have a really strong music theory background, you can start editing things more quickly. You can like transpose things in key and make edits that are in key. If you're not super comfortable with music theory, that's fine too. Like suddenly you can start composing things that are a lot more harmonically interesting and a lot more harmonically rich without having to go too deep into your theory knowledge. In this case, I just drew in a triad, the 1, 3, and 5 of the scale here, and I just grabbed and copied it up to make the first chord of the scale, and then the 5th chord of the scale, and then 6, and then 4, just by dragging it up and down. And I'm going to take these top 2 notes and just select them, and there's a keyboard shortcut to transpose them down an octave. It's shift and the down arrow. And this is going to give me a slightly more natural voice leading. So it's going to kind of make the chords sound a little more like how I'd probably play them on the piano. I wouldn't like move my hand so far on the piano if I was playing them. And I'm just going to take these and make them all longer notes, because right now they're a 16th note, which is a really fast chord progression. I'm going to hit this ×2 button and just make each of these chords a whole bar long. And I've got like a really simple, nice starting point for some piano chords here. Cool. Yeah. This is actually the most common chord progression in modern pop music. You might not want to use it because it's been used so many times, but it's kind of funny. It's 1, 5, 6, 4 is just an incredibly popular chord progression in a lot of different modern music. So I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to just drag it over here to the arrangement view, because over here in the arrangement view is where I really want to get into showing you some of the next big new feature. Which is comping. You've probably heard that Live 11 has added a new take and comping system. I have a little video here with an artist that we worked with. His name is Dressage. She's a super talented vocalist, and she recorded some vocals using the comping in Live 11. Here, let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Keely. I produce and release music as Dressage, and I am going to record some vocals using Live 11's take lanes.
With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon. With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon. With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon. With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon.
Okay, so there's a few takes that Dressage recorded. I don't just have a video though. Keely sent me the actual project that she's working on. So let's just bring those vocals right in here so we can start to mess around with comping them together. So here is the vocal take, or actually several vocal takes. And I'm just going to take my chords from my piano and line it up here. And let's just loop this whole section so that we can just kind of focus on that for now. As you saw in the video, with the take feature in Live, you don't have to do any work to start capturing takes. If you just start recording over any audio on a track, Live's going to start to put that new recording into a new take lane. If you want to see those, you can right-click on a track, and right here from the contextual menu, there's a hide and show take lanes command that'll fold or unfold those. There's also a shortcut for it. Command, Option, and U will just unfold those so I can see all those takes. If you want to add take lanes manually, you totally can. There's a shortcut in here to insert another take lane if I want to make them myself and like deliberately record into them, but you don't have to. In the case of Dressage, she literally just created a loop, started recording in a loop, and every single time the loop came around, recorded another take, and there you go. You've like captured another idea. And then we can go back and start to edit together our favorite versions of these to really create like the ideal performance for this particular song. So in this case, I think we might want to like select, I don't know, this part of the first take here. I can just select it with the cursor and I can hit enter to automatically move this from the take lane up here to the main content lane. But I think it's actually faster just to use the pencil tool. If you hit the B shortcut, you'll bring up the pencil or the pen tool, and you can drag right across these, and automatically whatever I click on and drag across that particular take is going to be what gets selected and played back in the main content lane up here. Now, I can, sometimes when you're doing this kind of editing, you might like not edit perfectly on a zero crossing. So you can also select all of these if you want, and you can right click to say, hey, create crossfades right on the clip edges, so that if I'm not right on a zero crossing, there'll be a quick crossfade. We won't hear like a pop or a click out of it. This is one way to comp, but the idea is to give you a few different ways you can approach this. You could make that selection and hit enter. You could use the pen tool. The other thing you can do is select a region and hold down the command and the option key and just use the arrow keys to go up and down through the different takes. I think this one's especially cool because you can do it when the take lanes are closed. I can literally just click right here and say, hey, I want like this take, from that one, and select them without having to even open the take lanes. So it's a pretty fast way to work. And now that I've cut this together,
with every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon, but no one comes for you.
So I like this. There's a few different things I could do. Somebody asked the question, can you export these takes? Well, you absolutely could bounce this. If I wanted to select it all, I could also consolidate it and make it into a new clip. The other thing you can do, if you want to just insert a new take lane, maybe I want this one up here. You could take this whole section and copy it here. And then you've saved this whole comp, this whole edit. So then you can come down here and make a whole nother comp and try out a whole different set of a different way of combining these different takes together. If you don't like this new one, you can always go back and select this old comp and say, hey, use that one instead. So you can use these take folders or these take lanes in a lot of different ways. You can use them to hold original content that you're going to cut together. You can use this as a way to store different alternative comps. You can put anything you want in here. We could insert a new take lane and drag some drums in and like distort them and start to stretch them out. Like every one of these take lanes is, you can do all of the same sort of clip actions that you could also do with any other clip in live. So I can like select these and start to time stretch them, or maybe I want to grab one of these and deactivate it, or maybe you want to select part of it and reverse it. All the kind of editing moves that you could do to any other clip you can do right here. So let's go ahead and fold this up for right now, because comping isn't just limited to a single track of audio like this. You may have noticed over here in the session view, I've got these 3 MIDI clips. Maybe I want to try kind of editing those together. So I'm gonna add some take lanes here. I'm just gonna hit the Option Shift T to insert 3 take lanes here, and I'll come over here and I'm gonna grab these 3 clips and I'm just gonna bring them over into the arrangement view. And let's just put them on these different take lanes, and I'm just going to make each of them play the entire length of my loop here. Because once I do that, I can go through and comp this MIDI exactly the same way I'd comp audio. I can use the pencil tool and say, hey, maybe I want this much of this particular bass clip, and then I want to cut to this other one. Maybe I want to go back here for 4 bars. We'll just do that much of that clip, and there we go. And I can like sort of edit together a MIDI performance based on the different clips from the session view here. Super fun and a really fast way to put together different musical ideas. So we've got audio comping, we've got MIDI comping, we've also got vocals, piano, and bass going on right now.
He left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You how
So this song needs some drums. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab some drum files that my buddy Thomas recorded and bring them in. So he recorded his drums and he put the drums on different tracks. So he's literally multi-mic'd his drum kit, and I've got a separate track here for kick and snare and hat. I've got a mic for the kick beater microphone, or a track for the kick beater microphone, and I've got another mic for the overhead mics, or another track here for the overhead mics. Not only are there multiple tracks here, there's also multiple takes for each of these multiple tracks. So there's a lot of stuff here that's been recorded for me to edit together. In Live 11, there is a function called Linked Tracks, where I can select these different tracks, right-click on them, and say, link the tracks together. And now that I've done this, any editing decisions that I make to any one track are going to apply to all of the tracks. So if I select all these and I start comping them, I can do that same swipe comping move that I've done for the MIDI and the vocals. As I go through and start to swipe comp this, you'll see that I'm editing together a comp of the kick drum, but I'm also comping exactly the same takes on the snare and the overheads and everything else. So this makes it super fast to be able to create a comp and just make sure that like there aren't any phase issues where perhaps I have a different phase relationship from different microphones on different tracks, from different takes. But it also can speed up editing in a lot of different ways. Like if I just want to duplicate all the content on all of this, I just select one track and I duplicate it. And when I do that, I'm also duplicating all of the other tracks that are linked together here. So you can comp audio, you can comp MIDI, you can comp multi-mic audio, so you can link tracks together and do that. You can also, if you really want to, I don't know how many of us use video here in the arrangement view, but you can absolutely load video files into the arrangement view and be able to do some basic cuts only video. You can also edit together video files using the comping lanes if you wanted to. So here I've put 3 different videos onto 3 take lanes, and I can just go through and swipe comp the audio of the video. And when I do that, you'll see that we're editing together the audio, but we're editing together the video as well, so that when I play this back.
These are listening for texture.
Hi, I'm Robert.
My name is DJ Dahi.
I like to use to get through a creative.
Be distracting. So as soon as I made something I like, I turn it into.
These are listening for textures.
So that's super fun. I'm gonna go back to the music because now we've got some drums, we got some bass, we got some vocals.
with every single word. He left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl like the Brooklyn moon. But no one comes for you.
Okay, cool. Hey Claire, it looks like we have a question.
Yeah, sure. So Ben, are you looking at the YouTube chat? Or are you watching looking at the Zoom chat?
There's a lot of chat to look
Yeah,
at. I think
totally. There's a
I
lot
think
of
the Zoom chat has a lot of questions.
Yeah, totally. So I guess some of them weren't so much questions as much as clarifications, but if you could take one of these, I think one of them is quite pertinent at the moment. So
Yeah.
somebody was asking a question on editing the comp. What happens if you stretch a particular region and inside the main comp track and then switch to a different take? And I think there could be different methods of interpreting this. For example, would stretch mean warping, or would it mean, say, just extending beyond the length of a clip if you were switching between different comps? So maybe we could actually address both if
Sure.
possible. Yeah.
Sure,
thank you.
let's stretch her vocal out there. So each of these, this is a unique thing. We've got a content lane, and underneath it we have various take lanes. But just like on a separate track in Live, every instance of a clip can have totally different settings to it. So even though this particular clip here that basically you can choose to have totally different edits for every single clip in here. If I wanted to have each of these takes have a totally different warping setting so that they're all time stretched in different ways, if I want to make a selection from one of these and send it up here to the main content lane, I can also change it further here in the content lane, and it doesn't change my source material down here. So I can always go through and
Awesome.
kind of get as deep into this sort of editing as you want. So you'll notice that like right here, this particular part is actually from this first content lane, but if I stretch it, I'm not stretching the part underneath. I still have this original take untime stretched. So it's up to me. I can stretch this original take too if I want. It just depends on how I want to make my edit. So we kind of leave it up to you to decide, where you want to do your time stretching, where you want to reverse, how you want to affect the takes themselves and the main content lane here. So, hey, we got some drums, we got some bass, we got some vocals, we got some chords.
He left you hollow, drank till his vision blurred. You howl like the Brooklyn moon.
Let's jump into some of the other stuff in here. I think it would be great to show a little bit of the improvements to multi-clip editing, and then maybe we look at some MPE. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
So in Live 10, multi-clip editing allows you to select multiple clips and make your edits in context, where you can see what's happening in multiple different clips at one time. In Live 11, that goes one step further, because now not only can you see what's happening in multiple clips, you can also make edits across multiple clips at once. So, for example, if I select all of these clips on this track here that are all different clips on the bass line, I can see all the information here, and I can select and I can make big changes to all of the MIDI information on all of these tracks. This focus button right here kind of restores the Live 10 behavior. So if for some reason you want to see all of these clips, but you only want to be editing the frontmost clip, you can turn on focus, and then I can only actually edit one clip at a time, even though I can see multiple clips at once. With focus off, now I can make selections across clips. And where this becomes super powerful is, like in the case of this bass line, I just dragged these clips over from the session view, and it turns out they're not quite in the same key as the piano chords I wrote. If I press this scale button here, I can see that when I fold to scale, all of these notes in all of these different clips are not in the same key as the chords. So now with one click here, I can select all of these notes across all of these clips, and I can transpose them so that they're in key with the keys, so that everything is kind of playing in the same musical key, and it all kind of hangs together and it sounds harmonic and consonant and cool. Yeah, now in this case I made an edit across multiple clips that are next to each other, but you can also use this to make edits to clips that are playing at the same time. They're sequential. So like I could select both the keys and the bass line together and like transpose them all here, this kind of a thing. While I'm over here, let's start to talk about MPE. Sound good?
Yeah, totally. Actually, Ben, we did have one more question that I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I kind of, it would be good to answer anyway. But so the person who was asking also about the time stretching thing just now was wondering if, let's say, if you stretched out the time on one of the take lanes that you've done, would the same time stretching apply to other take lanes too?
It would if you link them together. It doesn't have to. Like if you link those tracks, then you can time stretch one, and when you do that, it will time stretch all of them. But if they're not linked together, then you're free to stretch one separate from the rest.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let's go ahead and I like to play this just because I'm a nerd and I think it's an awesome clip. But
please do.
This is this is something that I could probably only do in live easily now that Live 11 has MPE. Here is a great big block chord, but if I flip over to Live's new expression view, I can see right here that each of the notes in this chord has a totally different pitch bend message assigned to it. And the pitch bend messages for the MPE information are right here on the piano roll, so I can really easily see exactly where the pitches start and where they're bending to.
It's funny because like I'm looking at this and like you can, if anyone is able to guess what this is, we'll give you a virtual cookie for this.
You got 10 seconds. Okay, you got 2 seconds. Any guesses? Hey!
Hey!
Yeah, this is Deep Note, which like the real name for it is Deep Note. It's the THX sound. It's a classic piece of super early computer music composition that then got really strangely hard to make with modern MIDI gear. But yeah, it's a huge cluster of notes that start off really close together, and then they start to spread apart in pitch so that every single note has their own pitch bend message. I just drew this in, but a lot of people, when it comes to MPE, they like to play instruments in using different controllers. So MPE and Live means that Live supports basically all of the MPE controllers you may want to use. Things like the Rolly Seaboard, the Sensel Morph, the Linstrument, and a whole bunch of other interesting ones that I probably haven't thought of. The Continuum, all kinds of cool stuff. I'm just going to drag in this preset. It kind of sounds a little bit like a Geiger counter. Yes, it's very German today for our MPE demonstration. So what I can do, this is Wavetable. We've added support for MPE to Wavetable, Simpler, and Sampler. Wavetable has an MPE tab added to the modulation matrix. So right here you can go through and start assigning the different MPE messages to different parameters within Wavetable. In this case, the pressure message right here is assigned to affect the speed of the envelope for the amplitude. So the more pressure you have, the faster the envelope cycles. So we start to get this like kind of speeding up whenever you push harder on the instrument you're playing. So right in front of this, I have this new MPE control device. And what MPE control does is it lets me see my MPE data, and it also lets me kind of like shape it and control the sensitivity of the different MPE controllers. So I can kind of dial in exactly how sensitive I want stuff to be. Now, if you don't have any of these fancy MPE controllers, that is totally fine. You don't even necessarily need them. With Live 11, Push 2 also added support for polyphonic aftertouch. So it doesn't have the multi-dimensional polyphonic expression, but it does have monodimensional. It has just the aftertouch pressure, which is sort of like 1/3 of the 3 messages that you'd get out of something like a Seaboard. But it does mean that just by using the pressure on the pads, every single one of these pads on Push is going to send out its own pressure message. So I could play a chord, and you'll see all 3 notes appear here in expression control, and it's reading the pressure of each note separately. So if I push them all really hard, they'll all start to synchronize, and then I can let like just one finger press a little less hard, and it starts to fall out of phase with the rest. And I can make really weird kind of like polyrhythms out of this just by changing the pressure intensity of the different fingers on Push. So yeah, even if you don't have an MPE controller, you can get started kind of playing with per note pressure right here on Push. What I am going to do, the other thing that I really personally like to do in Live 11 is I like to play with the MPE messages, sometimes just by drawing things in. If we come over here and we have a look at these bass notes, this is a really nice deep 808. It might be fun to create some like note glide. To let these like 808s slide around and let the pitch of one note blend into the other. So I'm just going to select all of these notes, and I'm going to push the legato button. That's going to make all the notes longer so that each one ends right where the next note starts. And I'm going to come over here to the expression tab, because here on the note expression tab, now when I click on any of these notes, I get the pitch bend message for that note right there. So this means that I can like say, hey, this note should perfectly slide to this other one. By the way, it doesn't have to slide perfectly in tune. You'll notice as I drag this, we get like semitone, we get like cents and semitones, so we can be out of tune or out of like well-tempered tuning. If I hold down the command key, this is like now quantized to well-tempered tuning, so it becomes super easy for me to like make these notes glide perfectly from one to the other. Or I could like make them glide in a totally different direction. Like maybe I don't want this one to go down there, maybe I want this one to go like way up like an octave higher instead. And let's like have that happen sooner. Because it's a bend message like this, it's really easy for me to like control exactly how fast the bends should be, when they should start, how long they should go. So it makes it super fun. Like if I solo this bass line for a second, now we've got like a bass line that glides around. This one should go up. That'll be fun. Somebody in the chat asked about microtones. You can totally make microtones, yeah. In fact, it's a little easier to make microtones than to not do microtones. If I just move this a little bit, we get off of the traditional like Western tuning. I actually hold the command key to keep it from being microtonal. So yeah, all sorts of microtonal bass. Who doesn't want microtonal bass? But yeah, this is to me, this is the fastest, easiest way to program things like 808 note glides, 303 acid parts, all kinds of stuff. It's super fast. When I select each of these notes, by the way, I've only really been editing the pitch bend message, but you could also go down here and edit slide and pressure. You could make these larger. You could take the pencil tool and draw in movement if you want. So it's really quick to be able to create different expressions for each note in here, even if you don't have a controller at all. Somebody asked, hey, can you make your own custom scales and save them as a preset? What I would say, if you want to make your own scales, what you probably want to play around with is the scale device that's built into Live. If you go to the MIDI effects section, there's a scale MIDI effect. And what it lets you do is remap any note in Live to be any other note. So you can create your own custom scales here and then save them as presets. In terms of scales in the piano roll, no, at the moment, the different scales that you get here in the piano roll are built into Live. You probably could find some sneaky text file somewhere and hack it to edit them, but no, at this point, there's a lot of scales in here. There are definitely more scales in here than I'm personally likely to use in my own music, but yeah. I would recommend the scale device as a quick way to easily make your own and save those. So hey, we've got some gliding 808s, we've got some bass, we got some piano, we got some vocals. Let's play around with some effects. Anybody want to hear some effects?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to start off with hybrid reverb. So the reverb that has existed in Live for a long time is what we call an algorithmic reverb. What hybrid reverb does is it combines two really amazing technologies to create space. Hybrid reverb combines a convolution reverb with an algorithmic reverb into one device. Convolution lets you sort of sample real acoustic spaces. So you could like go into a room that you really like the acoustics in and turn on a microphone and hit record and like pop a balloon in there, and you'd capture this fingerprint, this sort of acoustic snapshot, what we call an impulse response of how that room sounds and how sound behaves in that room. And from there, we can totally recreate that sound digitally within the computer. Now, alongside hybrid reverb, there's a bunch of impulse responses built into the device, so you can just pull up sounds of different spaces right away. But you can also drag any audio file you want in here to use as an impulse response. So if there's like if you already have some impulse responses you like, or you just want to try out something weird and wild and spacey, drag like a vocal in here or put like a snare drum in here and use it as like a example of what a type of acoustics might sound like. It's totally wild, and you'll get something really unique and different sounding. Let's solo the piano and just hit play. Right in the middle here, we've got this blend control, and what blend will let you do is shift between only hearing the convolution or blending in the algorithmic reverb. To start off with the convolution reverb, I'm going to increase the stereo width just a little bit. I know Zoom may not even be running in stereo at the moment, but it's fun for me to get to hear it in stereo.
Sorry, it's not, yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. Right over here at the beginning of the device, the pre-delay can be set in milliseconds. It can also be set in musical subdivisions, which is super cool. With the different musical subdivisions here, I can dial in sort of like a slapback echo sound. I can turn up the feedback. And we get a delay right out of this. The other thing that I like to do, I'm kind of into weird music sometimes, so I'll set this to milliseconds and use a really short millisecond time and crank the feedback. And you start to get this sort of tuned feedback out of it that is not quite related to the harmonics of the rest of the song. It's maybe kind of a little bit Aphex Twin sounding, but like it's a really neat acoustic space that I just wouldn't get anywhere else. And I can play with different pre-delay times to kind of capture different sort of tuned resonant frequencies in here. It's really wild. It almost makes this thing sound like an instrument. Turn that down a little bit, make this a little less extreme. I'm gonna flip over here to the algorithmic side so we can really hear some of the different algorithms. First, we've got Dark Hall, which is a really nice sort of bread and butter, all-purpose reverb algorithm. It sounds great on a lot of different things. I especially like to play with the freeze because I can capture and sustain some of the sound in this really, really beautiful way. really cinematic. Like if I was gonna alongside Dark Hall, we've got Prism, which uses sort of a form of a velvet room algorithm to give you this unique sort of blur to the decay. You would control the volume of the freeze by using the wet-dry control, because once you've frozen it, the fully wet is only frozen and fully dry is no frozen. So that's how you'd kind of balance the level of the two. Next up here is Tides. This one is super fun. What Tides does is it modulates the tails of the reverb in this sort of rhythmic way, where it sort of filters the tail of the reverb. If I turn this up and I increase the speed, you can start to hear at a really high speed what it's doing. I think it kind of sounds especially cool a little slower. I kind of don't usually use it at a really, really high rate, but at a slower rate, it adds this really interesting kind of rhythmic effect to the tails on all the verb. We've got Quartz, and what Quartz does here is it gives you basically a set of discrete echoes, and then it diffuses the echoes. So this can be really interesting with rhythmic material, because I can control the speed of the different delay times to give me different echoes and then diffuse them. In fact, if you pull the diffusion down, you basically get a slapback echo. And next up here is Shimmer. Shimmer is beautiful. So a classic Shimmer reverb, it actually can kind of be a shimmer or a submarine. With a Shimmer reverb, you take the sound and you pitch shift it up, usually an octave, and then you put that into the reverb so that it adds all this beautiful upper harmonics to the sound. This one also sounds really good if you pull the pitch shift the opposite direction, you shift things down an octave, you get this deep, rich. Suddenly that piano is like super thick and it has some bass into it. I might leave that actually, that sounds kind of nice. I'm gonna come over here and use the EQ. The EQ can be pre or post algorithm. I'm just gonna like bring a little bit of the mid-range up here and take a little bit of the super low out just so it doesn't fight with the bass. Cool, okay, let's move on to one of the other devices. I'm gonna switch over here to the drums for a minute. And I'm gonna bring in, there's two new effects in Live 11 that are both spectral effects. So what they do is they take whatever sound you feed into them and they split it up into individual sine waves, and then they affect those sine waves in different ways, and then put the sine waves back together again to kind of reconstitute the original sound. The first one I'm gonna use is Spectral Resonator. This is probably like my personal favorite of the two. I don't want to hurt Spectral Time's feelings. It's a really cool effect, but I'm like a sucker for resonator effects in general. This is like, they're just things I like to use in my own music a lot. And so what this does is it's going to take the drums, it's going to split the drums up into individual sine waves, and then it's going to use them to excite a resonator model, which creates all this like sustained tonal information. These are my drums, but like it turns them into a synthesizer. Like suddenly this doesn't sound anything like drums. If I turn down the wet dry, I kind of hear some drums again. But alongside it, I have all this interesting kind of very unique sustained harmonic stuff. I can change the frequency of the information. So resonator effects, you know, they can sound a little bit like a synthesizer, a little bit like a vocoder. They can also sound a bit like a harmonizer. It just depends on how you use them. In the case of this one, it's also got this whole section here that will do different things to modulate the individual sine waves. They can get pretty wild. So like, I can start to chorus the individual FFT bins here. I could do some granularization to it to wander through them to get super, super space age. What I'd like to do, I like to play this like an instrument. So right now the frequency is always being controlled by this knob, but I could also say like set the frequency based on the MIDI in my piano part. And I can put this into poly mode. And now all that like extra tonal information is in tune with the piano part. Maybe we crank up the unison a little bit to sort of thicken up this sound a little bit. And these are just the drums, but it's like sounds great.
Sometimes we don't exist. With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl like the Brooklyn moon.
Okay, let me bring Spectral Time in here. And I didn't mean to hurt Spectral Time's feelings. Spectral Time, what it does is it also splits your sound into individual sine waves, and then it lets you affect them in unique waves. It has a delay built in here where it can delay different parts of the frequency spectrum different amounts. So if we just focus on that for a second.
He left you hollow. Drank till his
So
vision
right now I'm
blurred. You
delaying
howl like the
all of the
Brooklyn
spectrum
moon.
an even amount. But if I start to use this tilt control,
But no one comes for you.
I'll start to delay the high end more than the low end.
Used to see beauty in the trepidation. The tides are closing in.
I could also go the other direction, and I could sort of emphasize the low end by delaying the bass frequencies a little more than the high
Sometimes
end.
we don't exist. With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon. But no one comes for you.
On the other side here is this freeze function.
You s-
What freeze will let you do is it'll let you grab and sustain parts of the sound. So I can literally pick out words and say,
He left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon.
and I don't have to press this button manually if I don't want to.
Comes for you.
The retrigger function right here will let me say, hey, automatically retrigger this, either based on the volume of the audio I'm feeding it, or at specific musical
The tides
subdivisions.
are closing in, swallowing the tourists.
So I can turn this into this super weird, spectral, ethereal, ghostly sort of vocal, just by grabbing parts of her voice and sustaining it to make them longer.
He left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon. But no one comes for you. Used to see beauty in the trepidation. The tides are closing in, swallowing the tourists. Sometimes we don't exist.
Anybody have any questions about these effects really quick before we start to look at some new stuff?
Yeah, so we actually had a couple of questions, maybe a little bit from before, Ben. But
Yeah,
so
no, that's fine.
as far as the scale stuff goes, maybe this could also have a little bit of clarification to it. But for the snapping to a certain scale, or it's not actually snapping, is it? It's more of just like showing the notes. Because someone
Yes.
was asking if it was an autocorrect to a scale.
Right. Yeah. No, the way it works is it changes the way you see the information in the clip. It doesn't ever change your notes themselves. It does make it easier for you to change your notes if you want to, but lots of people like to write music that's in more than one key at one time. And so rather than having this work in a way where everything in the clip had to be in the same key all the time, which is what would happen if changing the scale value changed the key. You'd like never get to stay in, you'd never have two different things in two different keys because it's constantly changing them all. This just changes your view to make it much easier for you to work in multiple different keys at once. Or if you want to change keys to easily see where you should move your notes. If I want to do a key change, I can like select this and say, well, let's go from G to E. And then suddenly I can see all the notes in E here, and I can select things and transpose them. But yeah. So it's not actually changing your notes. It's just sort of changing the view of the clip here.
Totally. I mean, as far as the snapping thing, I know that you mentioned this earlier on too, but I feel like the scale device itself kind of does that in a way, and you
That's
can also
true.
get MIDI out from that too if you like had it on a new MIDI track too. So I guess that's
Yeah.
kind of already built in prior to Live
That's
11,
true.
I guess. Yeah.
Changing it in real time is exactly what you'd use
Right.
the scale device for. To be able to go in and say, hey, let's take the MIDI that's here and move all of it together. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we had one more question, and I think this one is pertaining to our Spectral friends.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you control the volume of the freeze?
So again, this is going to be a situation where the volume of all this is determined by the wet-dry control. If you are listening to this vocal, it would help if I wasn't playing. If I turn the wet all the way up, now all we hear is the freeze. If I turn it all the way to fully dry, no freeze at all, and I can dial in exactly how much I want.
With every single word, he left you hollow. Drank till his vision blurred. You howl at the Brooklyn moon.
And there is an input send control too, so if you did want to turn down the level of the vocal going into the freeze effect, you could. So you sort of have like an input control and an output control here. Totally up to you how you want
Cool.
to use the two of those together.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
Hey, no problem.
Cool. I think that's it. We have a lot of really excited comments in the YouTube chat. So yay, everyone's like, yay.
Oh, cool.
New
Awesome.
stuff. Cool.
Let me open up a new set here, and you guys can see some of the other live performance
Yeah.
things.
Awesome.
So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to come to templates. I'm just going to open up a different template, because that's a nice, easy way for me to get started. Let me hit delete. It's asking me to delete because I reversed some of the vocals. So it's like rendered out backwards vocals in some parts. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So in addition to those new devices, there are some pretty cool updates to some existing devices. In Live 10, if you remember, in 10.1, we actually took effects out. I know that sounds weird. There used to be 3 different delays in Live that none of them were called delay. They were all filter delay and simple delay and ping pong delay. And we realized if we merged all 3 delays together into one delay device, it could make all of the effects and sounds that each of those 3 devices could make without needing 3 different devices. But it also meant that suddenly you could make delayed sounds you couldn't have created with any of them, because there were all these cool sweet spots in between what each of the 3 different delays was capable of. So a similar thing has happened with phaser. We've taken phaser and flanger and put them together into one device. So now you can use it as a phaser, you can use it as a flanger, you can also use it as a voice doubler. Let me go ahead and hit play on this keys track here. I could use this to just thicken up the sound of the keys a little bit, or I could get a nice sort of flanging effect on the keys, or I can get a really thick phased sound. The new phaser now has an insane number of notch points on it to really get like a thick, wide phased sound. In addition to this, there's like a mid-range warmth control here that I can use to add a little bit of drive if I want to just sort of thicken up the sound a little bit. There's also a bunch of new modulation options that didn't exist in the phaser or flanger before. A similar thing happened with chorus. So chorus got a little bit of an upgrade. The chorus effect isn't totally new, but what it has now is an extra third delay line. What that third delay line means is you can create thicker 3 delay line chorus sounds if you want. It also has the warmth control, and it has a vibrato control. So this is like perfect to make your pitch get a little woozy and wild. You can use this to simulate all sorts of old school lo-fi sounds. You know, you want to get into your lo-fi hip hop. This is a great way to have everything go a little out of tune every few beats. You want to make some Boards of Canada style sort of lo-fi ambient music. You want to use it just for all kinds of wild space sound effects, you can do that too. Sorry.
No apologies. That was so great.
I'm going to bring the drums in for just a second here. We'll just start off with a kick, because the other one that's gotten an update is Redux. Redux has been in live for a really, really, really long time. That is a little Tascam reel-to-reel time. Yes. Redux still does bit depth reduction and sample rate reduction, but it's got some more controls to let you really tune in this sound. So what Redux can be useful for, like, making lo-fi digital sounds is useful for a bunch of things. Some people just want to capture the sort of like particular feel of some older, like early digital gear. Classic vintage samplers tended to have like 12 bits for the bit depth rather than 16-bit. And this 12-bit depth, it creates kind of like a natural compression, which is one of the things that helped make some of these classic samplers like the SP1200 like kick and sound like they hit so hard, because the lower bit depth was kind of a natural compression on all of the drum sounds. So you can use it in a subtle way to get these sort of vintage digital sounds, but you can also go older and you start to get like sort of chiptune-y lo-fi distortion. I can start to use the new shape and jitter controls to get different character out of these. And when you reduce bit depth and sample rate, you can easily create like a lot of like high-end harmonics. So there's now a filter built in so that you can decide to filter out some of those harmonics to get just the right amount of distortion that you want. And there's a wet-dry control if you want to let some of the original signal through, so that you're not you can kind of choose exactly how much you want to affect the character of your sound. Somebody asked if I use the reel-to-reel for anything. Absolutely, I use it to make things sound like they were on tape. It's also really fun to buy like used reels of tape off eBay and play them and discover what weird, bizarre things people decided to record at home in the 70s. So anyway, we got Redux, we've got Chorus, we've got the phaser and flanger. By the way, some of the AAS instruments, electric, tension, corpus, and collision have all gotten new user interfaces that make them a little easier to understand and use. So right here, at a glance, you can see the like different controls in the electric piano itself. If I want to adjust the hammer inside the electric piano, I can see right here that I've selected the hammer, and I can see all the hammer-related controls. If I come over here to the tines, I can see the tines lit up, and I can adjust the tine controls from right here. Okay, so we got some drums, we've got some keys. Let's go ahead and add some more instruments here. While I have some stuff playing, this is maybe a good time to mention the CPU metering is improved in Live 11. So now you've got the average as well as the current peak CPU level from your project. And seeing these is cool. It's great to know how much of your computer resources are being used, but that's not super useful if you can't like make meaningful decisions to change and affect this. So now right here along the bottom of every track in Live 11, you've got a per track impact meter, which shows you at a glance exactly how much of your computer power is being used by that specific track in your project. Super helpful. Now I know at a glance that like, hey, these drums have a lot of effects on them. They're what's using up most of my computer power. I probably should like freeze these drums if I want to save some of the computer power and make this go down and be able to like produce more work. Let's go ahead and let's talk about follow actions. So there's a few different things that have been added to Live 11 that are all focused on trying to allow you to be more unpredictable. The realities of making music is that if you always approach things exactly the same way, music making can start to get a little stale. Like you can really easily get yourself in a rut. Oh, my face was in the way of the CPU. I'm sorry. It's just a CPU meter. You can totally download the beta and see it. It just shows you two different bars instead of one, so you can see how much CPU is being used. It's
more reason to join us in the Zoom chat next time, because we can see it here.
If I move it over here, can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
There you go. And you also see my messy desktop. Sorry, I'll hide that again. Anyway, so there's a bunch of different features in Live 11 that are aimed at allowing you to be less predictable. And it's really interesting to get to play with them, because during a live show, they can help make live shows a little more dynamic and a little more interesting and unique. In the studio, they can be a really, really powerful way for you to come up with new ideas and just kind of surprise yourself and divert from like the pre-prepared. I think music starts to get a little like a lot more fun when it's also a lot more unpredictable, and you can kind of not quite know what's going to happen next. It keeps it feeling dangerous and exciting and fun. Anyway, one of the ways that people sometimes automate parts of their live show, but also kind of add some unpredictability to their performances, is with follow actions. Follow actions is a feature built into Live's session view that allows you to say that when this clip plays, after a certain amount of time, do something else. Like maybe play a different clip, maybe launch the same clip again, maybe jump 3 clips down and play that one. And follow actions have gotten a lot of big improvements in Live 11. The first is that the user interface itself makes a whole lot more sense. Now, when we look at the follow actions section here, there are these 2 drop-down menus that have different follow actions in them. And right underneath it, this crossfader lets me select the exact probability that either this action should happen or this action should happen, or if I put it right in the middle, there's a 50-50 chance that either of these 2 will happen, and you can kind of roll the dice and let Live figure out what should play next. It's totally up to you. Follow actions also have a linked and unlinked mode. If you have used follow actions a lot, you're really going to appreciate this, because the old school way of working with follow actions, they're always unlinked, and you have to go in here and say exactly how long the clip should play before the follow action occurs. Well, now, in unlinked mode, you have this locator right here that you can drag right around inside the clip, set the exact spot that the follow action should occur. But I think the most common thing people want is for a follow action to happen at the end of a clip. And now this new linked mode makes it super easy to do that. Linked mode is usually turned on by default, and it just automatically means this follow action should happen at the end of a clip. If you'd like a clip to play more than one time, you can come in here and change this multiplier, so that maybe you want to say, hey, maybe this clip should play 4 times and then the action should happen. But it just makes it super fast to set up follow actions that occur right at the end of the clip. There's another thing that's built in to help speed up creating these, which is that if you select a group of clips, you can right click on them and say, hey, create a follow action chain. This is a really great way to say, hey, play this one, then automatically play this one, then automatically play this one, then come back to the first one. This is something that lots of people like to do with different like hardware drum machines, lots of like pattern-based sequencers. It's really fun to create different ideas in different patterns and then chain them together and loop through them and combine short patterns together into bigger patterns. So now what it's going to do is rotate through all these different vocals. We've also added follow actions to scenes. So if I look over here at this scene, the scene itself now has a follow action setting in here. Now scenes don't have any inherent length, so they don't have a linked mode. They only have an unlinked mode. But right here I can say, hey, play this scene for 4 bars. And then after 4 bars, automatically use the new jump action. The jump action lets me specify a specific scene or clip slot that should play next. So in this case, when I trigger this scene, we're going to get a little breakdown. Everything's going to stop playing but the hats and the keys. It's going to play for 4 bars, and then after 4 bars, it's automatically going to go launch scene 2 up here and bring everything back in. So that's like a super quick use for this kind of thing. Like start to set up different behaviors so that you don't have to like think of coming out of the breakdown. You just say, hey, I want a breakdown to happen. And the breakdown launches and it just automatically does its thing. And then after the breakdown's over, the track drops back in without you having to really think about it and specifically come back out of the breakdown. So another way that you can start to mess around with probability and kind of deviating from the prepared, if you think about it, follow actions are a great way to like set up interesting, unexpected things to happen to like the structure of your song. But you might want unexpected things to happen inside a clip itself. So if we just focus on this one track here for a minute. By the way, I'm going to say that these clips should also have a follow action chain, because then they'll just rotate through these different clips. It's super fun. Anyway, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to set this clip to also just be in a key. We'll use this nice key mode to say we're in G minor again, and I'll fold to the scale. And then, so in Live 11, every single note in the piano roll can have its own probability setting. Let's play that clip. So I can draw in some notes. And right down here, they each have their own probability setting. So I could say that, hey, let's have like a reduced chance that some of these notes play. Now, every single time Live gets to one of these clips, it's going to roll the dice, and there's a 50-50 chance that maybe it plays the note and maybe it doesn't. Okay, this maybe isn't the most interesting, like, sonically amazing example, but where this becomes super useful is it means that you can start to program patterns and perform patterns that are a lot busier than maybe you'd ever, like, really play. If I take all of these, and suddenly I put a bunch of notes in here, this is way busier than I would ever want this to be. But if I start to reduce the probability that these notes play, now I'm writing now every single 16th note, it's going to pick a different chord. Live has a slightly less than a 35% chance that any of these notes play, so it picks a different set of them every single time. It's kind of helping me write the harmony here on my own. I'm going to turn down the phaser just a little bit. It's a little more phase than I want. Now, sometimes you want the velocity to change as well. You could select all these notes, and you could randomize the probability, or randomize the velocity. There's a new randomize button right here that if you click it, will automatically give all of these notes a different randomized velocity value. But this just rolls the dice once. Every time I click it, they get a new velocity value, and that's the velocity value they have the whole time from that moment on. Maybe I want them to have a different velocity value every time. I could sit here and keep hitting this button over and over and over again, but there's this concept of a velocity range in Live now. And what the velocity range does is it lets you say, hey, every single time a note plays, pick a random velocity somewhere in this range, so that they never play with exactly the same velocity twice. It can make things feel a little more dynamic and a lot more human, because people don't usually ever play two different notes exactly the same volume twice. So I can start to randomize the probability, and I can randomize the velocity, and we can let Live kind of create an interesting pattern that I probably wouldn't write myself. Once you start playing with these, it really starts to change a lot of your approach to music making. So like here in the bass line, I didn't want to overdo it. I don't want like a totally random bass line. I really like the first 3 quarter notes worth of notes to all play every single time to ground the track. But here in the last fourth of the bar, I've added these extra little later notes, and they have a reduced probability that they happen. And that means that most of the time this bass line plays perfectly normally, but every once in a while, these extra notes at the end will trigger, and it kind of pulls your expectation later. It's a little bit of beat displacement that can keep the bass line feeling a little naturally unpredictable, a little funky. In a similar way, if I start this beat playing, the kick drums have like 100% probability. The kick is always gonna kick. I don't want the kick to drop out. And maybe the offbeat hi-hats also have 100% probability, but you know, I just threw in 16th notes worth of hi-hats, and I turned down the probability of some of the other ones so that this hi-hat pattern is just a little different every single time it plays. Maybe I want to add like an extra little ghost kick here and turn down the probability of it so that sometimes we get like a little extra kick and sometimes we don't. There we go. I start adding additional elements that I don't want to play every single time, but I do want them to play once in a while to keep things interesting and keep things moving. Okay, now there's a few other ways you could get unpredictable here. One thing you could do to add unpredictability is collaborate with other musicians. This is one of the best ways to mix things up and try things that are unexpected and like come up with new ideas. That's one of the great reasons to collaborate, is that like the other performers can surprise you. So one thing you can do in Live 11 is you can much more easily use Live alongside a real human drummer. I know it's amazing. You might want to play with actual other people. It may be hard during COVID, but like during the rest of the year, like next year and the year after, maybe you want to play with like a real human drummer. So Live 11 has live tempo following. If I come into the preferences here, I can turn on the tempo follower. I can show it up here in the main transport bar. And when this is turned on, I can select any input to my audio interface, and Live will listen to audio coming in that input from the audio interface, and it will follow along any tempo changes from that audio source. So if I attach like a microphone to this input and put the mic on the drummer, then as the drummer plays, Live will figure out the tempo the drummer's playing and play along with them, so that as they change the tempo, Live changes with it. I can show you, I don't have a drummer sitting here in my office, but I can show you a little bit of this. Here is a drummer that played along with this in the studio over in Berlin. On follow, and Live starts to detect the tempo of the drummer. So as she speeds up and slows down, Live speeds up and slows down with her. She's not even wearing headphones. She doesn't have to listen to the click track. Live listens to her. Okay, I don't want to spoil the rest of my fun. I'm going to close this now. So yeah, all you do is turn on follow and make sure you're sending your tempo-based audio into the inputs that you selected here in the preference pane. Now, there's one other way that you can start to get a little unpredictable, and that's with the way your sounds themselves sound, the timbre of your instruments. If I start this little synth playing here, oh, that's kind of a little busy. Let's go ahead and turn off some of these other instruments for just a minute. I'm gonna make a little breakdown here. Look at this track. Look at this device rack here. This is an instance of Wavetable, and it's inside an instrument rack. Well, all of the racks in Live 11 now have a new random button on it. You can use this random button to randomize all of these different macro knobs, let you quickly discover new sounds fast. And maybe there are certain parameters you don't want to randomize. Well, you can right-click on any of them and you can say, hey, exclude from randomization, so that that parameter doesn't get randomized. Like maybe it's the volume, and you never want to like suddenly have the volume of the sound change when you're on stage, so you can say exclude that one. If you press this button enough times that you find a sound you really like, you might want to keep it. So Live 11 also has macro variations, so that you save a snapshot of all of these knobs at this moment in time, so that you can recall them later, so I can jump back to my original sound. And if I wanted to anytime, I can load that other sound that I just randomly found with the randomization button. Now, this random button, it exists for all the racks. So it's not just instrument racks, it's also drum racks, audio effect racks, MIDI effect racks, all of them. Now there's a whole lot of stuff that can be mapped in here. If we go into the MIDI mapping, you'll see that there are buttons in here that can be revealed in mapping mode to map to any controller to give you hands-on control over these different macro variations. I have this one mapped already. I'll delete it so that you can see it. It's the last button. This is actually probably my favorite one because when I map it to something, like let's map it to a key here. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I already mapped it to a key. That's great. I can use the last button to automatically reload whatever macro I last loaded. This is super fun because it means like I can grab a controller, and from my controller, let's go back to just that for a second. I hit the wrong button and I launched everything else. Here we go. I can come over here to my controller and I can start to tweak the sound. And I could really destroy it. Like I could crank the distortion up and get it really far away from how it started. And then whenever I want, I just hit the last button and we snap right back to what we had planned. So during my performance, I can let things get really weird and really out there and know that I can quickly get back home anytime I want, wherever that is, just based on whatever the last snapshot I launched was. So that's yet another way that you can get a little unpredictable Live 11.
So Ben, we actually had a quick question about snapshots.
Yeah.
Is it possible to morph between snapshots?
So you cannot morph between snapshots, but you can. All of the snapshots are exposed to Max for Live, so you can use the live object model to build all sorts of wild stuff.
Ooh.
You can build devices that like randomize the snapshot for every single note you play, so you get crazy Aphex Twin where every note of your melody sounds totally different. Or you can build experimental sequencers that like sequence changing different snapshots at different times. So there's a lot of different things you can do with these. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
By the way, we realized if you could start to randomize these knobs and you could start to save macro variations for these knobs, the next thing you were going to want was more than just 8 knobs. So now you can use these buttons along the side to have up to 16, or if you want to be a super minimalist, you can have one very important macro knob. It's totally up to you how you want to use them. I love getting access to all of these and then being able to start to randomize all 16 of these and save different macro variations for all 16 of these different controls at once. Okay, I'm going to start to run out of time here in a minute, and before I do, I want to make sure that I show you a little bit of the new Max for Live things that have come in this update. I mentioned already that things like the macro rack variations are exposed to the live object model. There's some other really fun things tucked away in the live object model, but even if you don't want to dive in and like learn max patching and start to change the way live works with the live object model, first of all, other really nerdy people can, me included, can dive into that stuff and make really cool things and share them with you so you can use them. But the other thing is that Live 11 includes a bunch of different devices that you might want to explore. The first one that's really one I'm super, super excited about is this device called Pitch Loop 89. So it's based on this old Publison pitch shifter from the late 70s that's kind of a super interesting, creative, hands-on pitch manipulation tool. We say it's a pitch shifter, but you can do pitch shifting, you can do tremolo, you can do granularization, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it. It's a really wild, interesting musical effect.
That sounds amazing.
Thank you. I love this one. I feel like it makes everything really, really pretty. There's a collection called Inspired by Nature that's been developed along with Dylan Bastian. And they're a collection of different Max devices that are kind of playfully inspired by different natural phenomenon. Gravity, friction, tension, inertia, fractals, and other crazy stuff. And they're super fun to play with. They can create all sorts of really weird results, and they have really, really unique user interfaces. This first one here is called Tritone, and it uses different fractal models to create different droning and repeated melodic information. That's really wild. Particularly you run it through this other one that is a vector-based delay here. Okay, next up, before I get too lost in this, next up is this device called Emit. Emit lets you drag any sample in here and release emitters that'll play through parts of the sound. You can move these around to control the playback start point. And you can add additional ones too. If you want more than one emitter, that's totally fine. You can also create little walls if you want that the playheads should bump into and play in the other direction. It's a great way to discover all sorts of wild little melodies. Okay, next up we've got bouncy notes. This one's really fun to play with. You can play notes into it from a controller, and based on the notes that you play in, they bounce on the keyboard and repeat at particular rhythmic moments. Now you can also start to change the direction that they drop in so that they've got a little bit of inertia to move in different directions. And you can also draw in those same little walls that you saw before and emit to kind of change the direction that they bounce and how they interact. Okay, this might be getting a little crazy here. And the next one here, this lets me drag in a sample and then using the sample, play through it in different directions and different speeds. By the way, it doesn't have to be dragged in. You can record right into it from any of the other inputs. And it'll grab that sample and start to scroll and scrub through it at different speeds. It's a really beautiful effect. This is going to be at a Brooklyn ambient party in no time.
I feel like this is already the Brooklyn ambient party. Like,
Yeah.
Zoom.
So somebody was asking about new themes in live. Yeah, there are a bunch of new themes in live. And there's a lot of ways to control the look of live as well. If we come in here to look and feel, one of the first things that's probably useful for some folks is this new reduce automatic colors option. What this is going to do, if you have certain common forms of like color blindness, this will help reduce the color palette of clips so that you never get two clips that are difficult to distinguish between the color of those two. There's also a bunch of new themes that are all way easier on the eyes. This is the new mid-light theme. If we compare this to Live 10's mid-light theme, everything feels a lot grayer and a little darker. I much prefer this one. It sharpens it all up a little bit. There's a new dark theme. This is gonna blind everyone, but there's no. This one's really good, especially if you're working with like projectors and you need a lot of bright light on your face while you play. Anyway, there are some other controls in here, like the grid line opacity that I know people have wanted for a long time. If you feel like you don't have the best eyes anymore and you look in here at these grid lines and they're really, really soft, it's super nice to be able to come in here and turn up the boldness of the grid lines so that they're much easier to see. And this also applies to clips too. If you wanted to look at your clips and have much stronger grid lines here in the clips, this control will let you turn that up so that everything is just much, much sharper and much more easy to see where those subdivisions are. Okay, so at this point, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I guess you could have had them at any time and just asked me, but if you haven't asked them yet, this is your moment.
Everyone's having a great time on YouTube too, so someone said, "Go." Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. At this point, I feel like we should let Claire show some cool stuff, right?
I have nothing left to share, but
Oh no!
No, that's okay. It's totally cool. I think maybe I'll just I could share one quick thing maybe in relation to push, I guess.
Yeah.
For what's some stuff going on there. So I'll just do a super quick
Just show us what you're doing with it.
Yeah, sure, totally. So I've been doing a lot of in at least in like the last wow, that what a fancy fade out. At least in the last couple of days, which has been a little bit crazy. I've been trying to share a lot with a couple of other groups as well. We just did a Berklee College of Music user group yesterday, which was really fun as well. So maybe I'll speak a little bit about that. And also there was a question that we kind of answered several times in the chat, but I'll just repeat myself again. So as far as the lanes that happen, also my camera's doing a weird autofocus thing. I think it's because I'm moving my arm around so much. But yeah, so as far as like the lanes go for takes, we did mention this multiple times, but if you do want to have them separately, you need to put you can put them like on a separate track, like on a separate audio track, and then you'll be able to export that. I think we said that about 3 times. So just making sure that it's super clear. You can totally do that. You can do whatever you want with any clip. You can put it on any track ever that you would want, except MIDI and audio. Don't confuse those. But I'm gonna share my computer sound as well as my audio at the moment. Let me just check that we've got audio going and that my master is not all the way down, which it currently is. So let's see what we got. Cool. Great, cool. So this is a live set that I very quickly put together, but maybe just a couple of things. One thing that I loved about the session view stuff, in addition to the wonderful follow action things that Ben mentioned, which I'm a big fan of immediately. One thing I loved a lot was how a lot of tempo change and time signature features are built now into the master track. We used to have this really interesting code well, not really code language, but in older versions of Live, let's say if I wanted to make some kind of tempo change, and I'm going to use this lowest scene because I know that on YouTube, I think my face might be obscuring the top few scenes in the master track now. But over here in this last scene that I have in the master track, I'm also going to scroll down to that particular scene. I have a dedicated section where I can say, okay, I would like this entire scene to be launched at 104 BPM. And maybe I even want it to be, in a different time signature, but I'm just going to make it 104 for now. And you might be able to see that as I'm launching the different scenes and as I'm going between different tempos, the tempo on the top left of Live is changing. So over here, we've got 104. Let's get the 104 at the end. We can also check with the metronome. Everything's in time, which is great. Let's maybe go all the way up to 101. Cool. And again, it's not too much of a difference in the actual BPM, but that's kind of what I want. Something that I used to do a lot of before I knew about this idea of launching tempos and launching time signatures from the master track was I used to try to manually scooch things up a little bit with the tempo knob on push, but now we can kind of do that, and I can do it in a very organized type of way. Let's say I'm doing some other kind of live setup where I'm not just using push, but I'm using several different kinds of controllers. If push was mainly my scene launching or navigational controller, I'd be able to set up the follow actions for the different scenes to just have them follow through all the way. So we can just keep moving them down. Ooh, looks like we had a question from YouTube. Thank you, Thomas. Did you already mention if Live 11 is compatible with Big Sur? So maybe Ben could elaborate on this, but as a word of caution, maybe just from a CT and not someone who works at Ableton, never, 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 never never update to the latest version of anything immediately. I think it's always good to just be super careful about that. Wait for official statements and also just wait for kinks to kind of like slow down a little bit. So Ben, actually, would you be able to share if Live 11 is compatible with Big Sur? Ooh, sorry, I need to unmute you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hey, so yeah, the beta does open on Big Sur. Now, it is still a beta, and until an hour ago, Big Sur was also a beta. So, so please keep in mind that they're both super new. I think you're absolutely right, Claire. Like, there are already a number of manufacturers who've put out statements that their audio interfaces aren't ready yet, or their plugins aren't ready yet. And so while Live is ready, I would encourage you to wait, only because you may discover that things like some of your USB microphones you own, or some audio interfaces you own, or some plugins that you rely on, or some controllers you use every day aren't. And so it's always good to give yourself a little more time just to give all of the different manufacturers that make different equipment that you use all get up to date with the latest OS.
Cool. Thank you, Ben, for clarifying that. We also had one more question, actually, which I kind of know the answer to based off some experiences that I had as well. But is there any backwards compatibility as with the previous versions?
So this is also a good thing to know, especially if you are thinking you want to download the beta and start using the beta. If you cannot open live sets up in older versions of Live. They don't have the stuff needed to open them. Like if you work on a cool, awesome new song and it's filled with hybrid reverb and spectral resonator, those like don't exist in Live 9. So if you send that set to a buddy that has Live 9, they're not going to be able to open it. Now what you can do is you can use the export all tracks feature to export out the stems of your cool musical idea that you've written in the Live 11 beta. And share those if you're collaborating with someone. But yeah, it's important to know you can always go forward. If you have old stuff in Live 7, 8, 9, or 10, you can open that up in Live 11 and add new things to it. You can't go the other direction. Once you've saved something in Live 11, it's a Live 11 project now, because it may have all sorts of cool new stuff in it that doesn't exist in the older versions.
Totally. Thanks, Ben. Another thing I've also done in addition to the exporting tracks is like we can also still export MIDI clips. So if you do want to send MIDI information, you can also totally do that. And maybe you can recreate some kind of patch sound in an older version of Live. So there's that too. Yay! Thank you. Let me just check if I think. So someone asked what Big Sur is. It's the latest update to Apple computers. So if you don't use Mac OS, you don't have to worry about this, which is great. So yeah.
You also don't, it's also maybe good to say that you don't need the newest OS. Yeah. So Live 11 works with High Sierra or newer, and it works with Windows 10 or newer. So yeah, you don't have to update to the new OS to be able to use it, which is kind of cool. Some people have like really cool old plugins that they know aren't going to work in the new OS, and so it's kind of nice for them to know that they can keep using their old OS and still use the plugins they love.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Ben.
Hey, no problem.
Cool. Oh, so Heinrich, I might actually be about to answer your question. We had a question. Will there be a new push to support polyphonic aftertouch? So if you have Live 11 and if you've plugged in push, there will be a firmware update which is when you go into setup, you now have the option of not just mono pressure but poly pressure. So let's take a look at this right now. That's the way that I've set up push over here, and I have this clip that I have that's going on this track. Let me also pull it up so that everyone can see it over here. Let's pull this up and let's play this clip back at the moment. So let me also solo this. Cool. So I had this MPE enabled synth, which was, I believe, an instance of Wavetable, if I'm not wrong. Yes, an instance of Wavetable, which is now MPE enabled. If you click on Wavetable, there's an additional fourth tab that lets you do some MPE mapping. So what does this mean? It means that if I wanted to say assign one of these MPE node expression controls to control a specific parameter, maybe I wanted to use pressure on push to be able to change, let's say, what did I do in this case? I did oscillator position as well as filter frequency and a little bit of the subtone in Wavetable. So when I'm pressing on one single note, let me also make this a little bit louder so that we can all hear it in mixed view. Cool. So I've got this one note. The more I press on it, you can see that the filter cutoff is bumping up, and we're also scrolling through the Wavetable position. Now, if I play multiple notes, let's get a C minor chord over here. Or I think it's C minor. It's a minor 7th chord. Each of these notes that I'm pressing, I can change their filter cutoff and their oscillator position individually now. So I can be in, I think it's, no, that's E minor. So let's just start with these two notes, or maybe let's even start in a lower octave. So let's listen out carefully for this. I'll also bump up the volume a little bit. Let me know if it's too soft, everyone, or if it's too loud. Let's start with two notes. I'm going to try changing pressure on each of these notes independently, and let's see if we can listen out for both of their changes individually. So yeah, cool. So yeah, absolutely. So each of the notes has a different wavetable position. From my experience trying this out, the visual of the wavetable position is of the last changed parameter. So for example, I have these two notes. this one is changing, and then when I'm moving this other one, then that note is changing as well. So yeah, you can totally do some really fun things. You can of course edit the data like Ben mentioned just now. So maybe there's this one note over here that maybe I like to not have happen like so high up. I can always just keep dragging these breakpoints down. It's kind of a little bit like automation, which I'm a big fan of as well. It's kind of like automation, but for individual little notes, which is fun. So you can keep doing all of these different kinds of edits. One thing that I found really fun as far as MP stuff goes is the idea of using different kinds of features of say, an MP enabled synth, which I think I used in this case on the bass track. I believe it's another instance of Wavetable, just because Wavetable is one of my personal favorites. Like, thank you, Live 10, and now we have Live 11. In this instance, I think I also did, I did the resonance, I did the frequency, resonance in the opposite direction of filter frequency, though, so that when filter frequency increases, you get a lowered resonance with that. But in the end, I ended up doing this little part with, I think it was just one note being manipulated, but the pressure was able to give it a sense of rhythm. So let's listen to this bass clip. Metronome. Yeah, so you can do some fun stuff with other colors and so on. I think that was one of my favorite things. Now, this I'm only going to show one more thing because I know that because thank you, Ben, for that super comprehensive presentation. I need to rewatch that on my own too. I need to I'll watch it like twice to make sure I catch everything, because there's so much in Live 11. I think the one thing that I was very happy about was the macro snapshots, because I do a lot of live performance, as most of the 343 community knows is my quote unquote specialty. Push Woman is my superhero name. But if I take a look at my master track over here, I have a rack for a couple of snapshots for my different kinds of sound. So let's go ahead and launch the scene that I have this chorus section in with like the most parts. And let's see what's going on of the different snapshots that I have. I have 5 different snapshots. Cool. So I'll also turn off the metronome, and I'm also going to just bring down all of my other tracks, also all the different track volumes, and it might be faster to just do this from live itself. So let's grab everything, hold down shift, click on the tracks that we want to use, and lower them down. Cool. So I'm going to play this back, and then we'll switch between the different snapshots and just take a listen to what I have these set to at the moment. So here we go. This is like filtery stuff. Low pass, fade to gray, low pass distortion, high pass, gray, and phasing. Now, it's so cool that these snapshots are here, but gee, I wish there were a way that I could somehow access them very easily from my controller. So this is kind of why I also really love using Push, but I love using both the live stuff happen as well. Sorry, not the live user, the live port as well as the user port. So I love using user mode at the same time. I think what I like to do is do some MIDI mapping. But I'm going to, I'm going to MIDI map each of the launch buttons for the macro variations to my first 5 pads for push and user mode. So let's do intro. Let's make it this first one. Let's do second one over here. Low pass, great, this one. And then this one over here. Cool. So let's exit out of MIDI mapping mode and then hit out of here. So now I have the scene playing and I can switch between all of them. Yeah. Cool. So that's one way that you could do it, that you could start using the different functions of push and kind of integrating that with the macro snapshots thing. One thing that I do, which is maybe a little bit on like the techier side for our techier live experience design friends, if anyone else is in that boat as well, is the use of, it's like, what if I wanted this to actually be launched in time? Because one thing you might have noticed is that when I was changing between the different macro snapshots, it wasn't necessarily launching at according to the global quantization. It was just whenever I pressed a button. So if this is too techy, feel free to let me know. Or you can also just rewatch the video. But one thing I like to do a lot is have a specific empty MIDI track set up that is titled IAC for anyone who wants to guess what's going on over here. But what I have set up is on a Mac computer, you can use something that's called the IAC bus. You can also do something equivalently on Windows, I believe, but it's almost like an internal MIDI cable in your computer. So you can send stuff out of the IAC bus. Yeah, old school. You can send something out of the IAC bus and then receive it as MIDI again. So what I've done over here is, if you remember that very first pad that I had that I mapped, let's see exactly what MIDI note that was. I believe it was G#5, but let me just double check that by hitting into live and doing this. Yes, G#5 was my default variation. So maybe every time I launch a certain clip, I want it to launch exactly in time and just go back to my default variation after I've done all of those messy things with all of my different effects and different macros in the master track. I want to be able to return to my default thing in time with when I launch a next scene, for example. And to be honest, I'm not sure if that's going to work this time, just because Zoom always drives my computer crazy. It did work outside of Zoom. So if you want to get in touch with me outside of this, when we can all be in person, or if you ever see me do this in a live set, you'll know how exactly I'm doing it. But I'm launching the clip every time I want to go back to the default state automatically. So let's see what we got over here. Let's use one of the other more crazy, not crazy, the other more affected ones first. And I'm also just going to bump up all of the volumes of these tracks before we start doing some macro stuff. Cool. Great. So we got that all affected. Cool. And maybe I'm doing some kind of like transitional sort of situation. Let's launch the next scene. Yeah, slight delay because of the way that this is working, but this clip launched exactly in time with when I made the return to the chorus. So that could be a really great way of just launching and syncing everything up, provided you're not sharing your audio in Zoom and your CPU isn't going a little crazy. But this is great. Now, if I head over here to the top right, and if my Zoom window wasn't covering, so everyone in Zoom can see this, I can check out my CPU and I can be like, oh no, my current CPU is, oh no, it's freaking out at 33%. Or I can also check out which tracks might be a little bit more heavy if I were playing everything. This one. Look at that. And this one too. Some of the wavetable stuff. But at least we're able to do some MPE stuff with it too. So that's kind of like some of the immediate applications that I did with the new features, a couple of the new features in live. But that's kind of all that I wanted to share. Ben, did you want to add anything else?
Sure. A couple things. One, I was going to say there's already a really cool Max for Live device out called Sharpshooter that is like already done. That's like a macro controller to let you have a bunch of different ways to automate and trigger these different snapshots. So that can be a super fun device for people to play with. And I'm pretty sure it's free right now. He's just shared it for the love.
That's very kind. Is it available on maxforlife.com, or is there a specific location for it?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know if he's put it on. I don't know if he's put it on maxforlife.com. Let me look and see if it's gotten added there. He's a really wonderful developer that has made a bunch of other devices. Let's see. It's not posted there yet. Here, I'll show you.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, before I do, actually, I'll paste it into the chat so people can see it. That's what I'll do. I'll put it in the chat so that everybody can see. And one thing that you might want to show people, because I think it's something that people will bump into when they first start encountering MPE, is for any plugin that supports MPE, you can enable and disable MPE for the plugin. And I think a lot of people are going to bump into this because it doesn't work for Wavetable because Wavetable always has MPE.
Yeah, totally.
But every Max patch and every third-party MPE plugin.
Yeah.
So there's this funny thing where MPE plugins they do have a way to tell a DAW that they are an MPE compatible plugin. No one has ever used it. Nobody who makes plugins has like set this parameter on their MPE plugins. And so there's no easy way for Live necessarily to know if the plugin that you have loaded is compatible with MPE. We're trying to keep a list of the plugins that we know that are compatible, but if you load any MPE compatible plugin into Live, you can right click on the header of the device, and there's an enable or disable MPE mode that lets you tell Live whether or not a plugin should work as an MPE device.
That is awesome. Could we try it out now, Ben? Like, if that's cool?
Please.
Thank you. So one of the ones that I did a lot of testing out with for a bit was Serum. So maybe let's see if we can get that. Ooh, okay, cool. Let's grab Serum and let's drop it here. And even if we can't see the interface necessarily, let's go ahead and... Is it here?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
So enable MP mode is already on because Live 11 already knows that Serum is one of the plugins that supports MPE. If you have another plugin that you love to use and you know it supports MPE, you don't see that little MPE label in the title bar, just right click on it and say enable MPE mode. This is also true for Max for Live devices. If you want a Max for Live device to work as an MPE device, or the reverse, maybe it is an MPE device and you want it to stop acting that way, you can right click on the title bar and turn that on and off. It's up to you.
Cool. Let's turn it off. It's gone. Cool. Awesome. Well, I actually did have a quick question, Ben. So as far as the devices go, because I think if folks have checked out the Ableton website, they would have seen that wavetable, sampler, and arpeggiator are like the three big-ish MP devices. Would this then be the way to enable arpeggiator? Because I did take a look at it and let's see. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was missing something.
So Arpeggiator supports MPE already. When you play a chord into Arpeggiator, it's going to start to arpeggiate through the chord, and then it will send all of the multi-dimensional controller information through the Arpeggiator and assign it to the specific note. So you can hold your chord and then route all that cool MPE data to whatever is being arpeggiated.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. A lot of people have loaded MIDI monitor because the first thing they want to do is look at all the MPE data, and MIDI monitor doesn't have MPE mode turned on by default. So they load it and then nothing works because the MIDI monitor itself isn't in MPE mode. So it's filtering out all the MPE data.
That's cool. Thanks.
Anyway,
Thanks. We just used the word MP like 20 times in the last.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit like that quantum physics thing where like when you're trying to observe something, it stops doing the thing you're trying to observe. Yeah. Sorry.
Totally. No,
Sorry.
Ben, we actually did have a couple more questions in the YouTube chat, so just wanted to make sure I'm catching those as well.
Sure.
Someone was asking, does Live 11 address the issue of bypassed plugins with high latency still giving high latency on a track even when bypassed?
So one of the issues here would be that if you disabled a plugin and you got rid of the delay, the amount of like buffered space that plugin needs, then when you re-enabled the plugin again, your audio would drop out. One of the reasons that gets preserved is so that you can turn the effect on and off without changing the signal flow of everything and breaking the pipe in the middle. So no, it still does that.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
We had something else also that I guess it's kind of slightly relevant maybe. Someone was asking if 11 already has follow tempo for doing hybrid sets from say like Live, because Ableton is the company and Live is the software. So Live to see DJs, do we still need MIDI clocks?
I mean, it depends on how you want to use it. I think they both have their purpose. I think it can be really fun to not have to think about it and just route some audio in and let Live detect the tempo from the audio. MIDI clock can also be really useful though, especially because you can send MIDI clock in both directions. So you may want MIDI clock for a lot of really good reasons, so that you can sync Live to other things, you can sync other things to Live. MIDI clock also sends start and stop messages, which might be really useful in certain situations. Like the tempo follower will detect the tempo. That doesn't mean it's going to start live automatically. You're still going to have to say the downbeat is coming in 3, 2, 1, bang. Whereas with MIDI clock can send a start message when it starts playing, so that you don't have to worry about hitting play at the right moment. So yeah, there's still really good reasons to use both.
Totally. And as far as syncing stuff goes, I think one thing that I was also really excited about with the tempo follower stuff was like using that in tandem with Link. I think that could be a really cool opportunity, especially for a lot of ensembles who are playing together in an electronic type of sense. So yeah, excited for that. I need to test it out. Next thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Let's see. Any other questions? If anyone has any final questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. But maybe Ben, I have a question for you. If you had to pick, what's your favorite new Live 11 feature?
Oh wow. Oh, that's a really tough one. My favorite.
Sorry.
I'm really partial to the macro variations. I really, really like the way that can let me change my sound really dynamically and perform with it and make live feel even more live, where I can like destroy my sound in a really interesting way and know that I can like bang one button and snap back to the sound I had prepared right in time for the chorus. It's super fun to get to play with. So that's probably one I have kind of a personal soft spot for. It's something I've wanted in live for a really, really long time. But man, hybrid reverb and spectral resonator both sound super beautiful, and you can use them together. You can put the reverb on the resonator and it's even better sounding.
Yeah, totally.
And I've made some really interesting stuff just by using I am a terrible singer. No amount of comping is going to comp a great vocal take out of me, no matter what I do. But I've made some really interesting creative use for comping, like maybe using it in a way that's a little less the traditional studio approach to comping, where I will just start to play different ideas on an instrument, or maybe I'll pull an old song off YouTube and just start to record an 8-bar loop on top of itself, so that every 8 bars is stacked on a different track. And then I just start swipe comping between different parts of it, making a quick like vocal chop up of it. It's such a fast, fun way to chop up samples and get really interesting, unique results.
Totally. I didn't get to show this just now, but that's kind of one of the best parts about this, right? You can create something that's a little bit wonky like that from a bunch of different sorts of takes, but maybe that's for the next user group, so you should come and attend the next one. Anyway,
sure.
Cool. So we had another question, which I can kind of take this one. Someone was asking if there were any new instruments, and also some related questions to new features. We're actually running out of time, everyone, but if you want to check out the full list of new features, you can head over to ableton.com, and there is a full list over there. So that would be really great to peruse, especially if you're curious and if you're waiting for the beta. What better way to prep yourself for the beta than to Google and to read? So go ahead and do that. There's a really great repository of all the resources that you ever need to know if you just search for it. But yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning into the Ableton User Group. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you also to everyone specifically in Zoom for joining us in this virtual space, this very interesting place. And thank you to all of our friends on YouTube as well for tuning in. We hope you can join us in Zoom next time if you register early, and you can hang out with us and say hi. We're hopefully a fun bunch, I guess. But also because we can see Zoom stuff a lot easier than YouTube. So we will usually answer you much faster than otherwise. Also, I'm just going to make sure that everyone is muted who is not talking. Sorry, everyone. There's lots of feedback. We got sensitive ears, man. So yeah, thank you again to everyone in the YouTube chat. We will be stopping the stream in a moment, but we hope to see you again for the next meeting. Bye.